The night Vivienne Cole witnessed a murder, she made one mistake. She looked back. She was supposed to keep walking. Head down, earbuds in, coffee in hand, just another late night leaving the hospital where she worked as a trauma nurse. Chicago's rain-slicked streets were empty at 2 a.m., and Vivienne liked it that way. No crowds, no noise, just the hiss of tires on wet pavement and the distant rumble of thunder. She had taken the shortcut through Callaway Lane because the main road was blocked for construction. She had done it 100 times before. Nothing ever happened on Callaway Lane. Until tonight. She heard the gunshot before she saw anything. A single, clean crack that split the silence like a blade. Her feet stopped moving on instinct, every nurse's reflex, that automatic freeze before the body decides fight or flight. Then she turned her head. 3 men stood under the yellow wash of a single street lamp 20 feet ahead. 2 of them she didn't recognize. The third was on his knees in a puddle, hands raised, saying something she couldn't hear. The man standing over him was tall, impossibly tall. It seemed in that moment, dressed in a dark suit, that the rain was doing nothing to wreck. He held a gun loosely at his side like it was an extension of his hand. Natural, casual, like he had done this 1,000 times. He shot the kneeling man once. The body dropped without drama. And then, as if he felt the weight of her gaze from 20 feet away in the dark and the rain, he turned his head. His eyes found hers immediately. Vivienne ran. She didn't think. Her coffee hit the pavement, her bag swung wildly against her hip, and she ran the way she hadn't run since college track, all lungs and legs and pure animal terror. She could hear shouting behind her, footsteps, but she didn't look back again. She turned left, then right, then cut through the parking garage on 5th and pressed herself behind a concrete pillar, chest heaving, hand clamped over her mouth. She stayed there for 40 minutes. Nobody came. By the time she got home, she had almost convinced herself it wasn't real. Almost. She went to work the next morning because she didn't know what else to do. The hospital was loud and relentless, and it drowned out the image that kept surfacing every time she closed her eyes. That man turning toward her in the rain, unhurried, certain, like he already knew exactly who she was. She was halfway through charting her 3rd patient when someone touched her shoulder. Vivienne Cole. She turned. A man in a gray suit stood in the doorway of the nurse's station. Not hospital staff. His posture was wrong, too still, too watchful. "Who are you?" she asked. "Someone sent to give you a message." He held out a small white card. No name, no number, just an address printed in clean black type. "Tonight, 9 o'clock, come alone." "I'm not going anywhere," Vivienne said flatly. The man smiled without warmth. "He said you'd say that." He set the card on the desk and straightened his jacket. "He also said to remind you that he knows where you work, where you live, and that your younger sister is currently studying at Northwestern University on a partial scholarship." Vivienne's blood went cold. The man left. She stared at the card for a long time. The address led her to a building in the River North District, glass and steel, the kind of place that had no sign outside because it didn't need one. A man at the door checked her name against a list she hadn't put herself on and waved her through without a word. The elevator opened directly into a penthouse. It was not what she expected. No gold, no excess, just clean lines, dark furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, and walls of books that looked genuinely red. A fire burned low in a stone fireplace despite the season. And standing at the window with his back to her, still in a dark suit, was the man from Callaway Lane. He was younger than she'd thought in the dark. Late 30s at most. Dark hair, sharp jaw, the kind of face that belonged in a boardroom or on a wanted poster depending on the day. "You actually came," he said without turning around. "You threatened my sister," Vivienne said. "So yes, I came. And I want to make something clear before this conversation goes any further. I don't scare easily." He turned then. His eyes were darker than she remembered. A deep, unreadable gray that moved over her face with unsettling calm. "I know," he said. "You ran last night. Most people drop to their knees and beg. You ran." Something shifted at the corner of his mouth, not quite a smile. "I found that interesting." I'm so glad my terror entertained you, she said. What do you want? Sit down, Vivienne. I'll stand. A pause. He studied her for a long moment with that same unnerving stillness. Then he moved to the bar cart and poured 2 glasses of whiskey. He set one on the coffee table in front of the sofa and kept one for himself. My name is Nikolai Voss, he said. I run certain operations in this city that require discretion. Last night you saw something that puts both of us in an uncomfortable position. You mean I saw you commit murder? I mean you saw something that, if reported, would create complications. He sat down in the chair across from her, whiskey balanced on one knee, entirely relaxed. I'm not going to hurt you, Vivienne. If I wanted you dead, you wouldn't be standing in my living room. Then what do you want? I want your silence, he said. In exchange, I will ensure that you and everyone you care about remains untouched. You go on with your life. You forget Calloway Lane. We never see each other again. Vivienne stared at him. That's it, she said. That's it. She picked up the whiskey glass, took a slow sip, set it back down. Here's my problem with that, Mr. Voss, she said quietly. The man you killed last night, I recognized him. He was a patient of mine 6 months ago. Car accident. I spent 4 hours keeping him alive in the trauma bay. She met Nikolai's gaze steadily. So forgive me if I'm not rushing to shake your hand and walk away. Something changed in his expression then. Something she couldn't name, not quite surprise, but close. You're serious, he said. I'm always serious. Nikolai set his glass down slowly. He looked at her the way she imagined he looked at problems, calculating, thorough, turning her over in his mind like a puzzle with an unexpected piece. That complicates things, he said. Good, Vivienne said. Now we're both uncomfortable. She should have left after that first meeting. She knew it even then, standing in his penthouse with whiskey on her tongue and anger in her chest. Nikolai Voss had offered her a clean exit, and she had, essentially, spat it back at him. Not smart, not safe. But Vivienne had never been particularly good at walking away from things that felt wrong. She became a trauma nurse because of that. Because she couldn't leave a person bleeding on a table. She stayed in the city after her parents died because her sister, Cora, needed her, and leaving felt like abandonment. And now she couldn't let go of the image of a man named Dennis Hale, quiet, grateful, who had gripped her hand before surgery and said please, crumpling in a puddle on Calloway Lane. She went home. She did not sleep. She did not call the police either, which told her something about her own instincts she wasn't comfortable examining too closely. Instead, she spent 3 days going about her life, waiting for something to happen, but nothing did. No gray-suited men appeared. No threatening cards. No black cars following her home. Just silence. And then on the 4th day, she came home to find Nikolai Voss sitting at her kitchen table. Vivienne stopped in the doorway. Her keys were still in her hand. For one wild second, she considered throwing them at his head. How did you get in? She demanded. Your lock is a quickset, he said, as if that explained everything. He was in a different suit today, charcoal, no tie, the top button of his shirt undone. He looked out of place in her small apartment the way a wolf would look out of place in a house cat's kitchen. Sit down. I need to talk to you. You keep saying that like I take orders from you. You should, he said simply. It would make both our lives significantly easier. She sat down because her feet hurt after a 12-hour shift, and she refused to let him see her hovering in her own doorway. She dropped her bag on the counter and crossed her arms. Talk, she said. Dennis Hale was not innocent, Nikolai said. He folded his hands on the table, clean hands, she noticed, which felt obscene given what they'd done. He worked for me for 2 years. He was skimming money from operations and selling information to a rival organization. What you saw was not random violence. It was consequence. You're explaining yourself to me, Vivienne said slowly. Why? Something moved across his face, a flicker of something she couldn't read. Because you didn't go to the police, he said, and I want to understand why. Maybe I'm still deciding. It's been 4 days. I'm a slow decision maker. His mouth curved then, actually curved, the ghost of something that might have been amusement on a different man. "No, you're not," he said. "I've had you looked into, Vivienne. You make fast, decisive calls under pressure. You argued with an attending surgeon in the middle of a procedure because you believed he was wrong and you turned out to be right. You took guardianship of your sister at 24 without hesitation. You are not a slow decision maker." The fact that he knew those things about her should have terrified her. It did terrify her, somewhere underneath the anger. "Stop researching me," she said. "Stop being interesting," he replied. The silence that followed was a different kind than before. Vivienne was aware of it pressing against her skin, aware of the fact that he was watching her with that steady, unnerving attention, aware that she was not afraid of him the way she should be, and that this was probably the most dangerous thing about this entire situation. "What do you actually want from me?" she asked. "And don't say silence again, because clearly that conversation is over." Nikolai was quiet for a moment. Then, "I need a trauma nurse." She blinked. "What?" "My organization occasionally sustains injuries that cannot be treated at a hospital without generating questions I don't want answered." He held her gaze. "I need someone skilled and discreet. I will pay you extremely well. You will not be harmed, and you will not be asked to do anything except your actual job." "You want me to be your personal black market medic?" "I want you to save lives," he said, "which is, as I understand it, what you already do." Vivienne stared at him for a long time. "If I say no," she asked, "then I leave, and you never see me again, and we return to the original arrangement. And if I say yes, then you become someone under my protection," he said quietly, "which in this city means something." She should have said no. Every rational part of her brain was screaming it. This man was dangerous in ways she couldn't fully map, and whatever orbit she stepped into by agreeing would not be easy to leave. But Dennis Hale was dead, and someone had kept him alive once, and it hadn't mattered, and Vivienne was so tired of losing. "I have conditions," she said. Nikolai tilted his head. "My sister stays completely out of this. Her name is never mentioned again. You never go near her, never use her, never let anyone in your world know she exists." Vivienne's voice was steady. "And I am not your employee. I am not on your payroll. I help when I choose to help, and I walk away when I say I walk away. Those are non-negotiable." A long pause. "Agreed," Nikolai said. Just like that. "You're not negotiating for money or power," he said. "You're negotiating for people you love." He stood, buttoning his jacket. "That I respect." He left her apartment the same way he arrived, silently, completely, like he had never been there at all. Vivienne sat at her kitchen table for a long time after. She was in trouble. She already knew it. The first time she was called, it was 3 a.m. on a Tuesday. A black car appeared outside her building 12 minutes after her phone buzzed with an unknown number and a single word. Now. She had her kit already packed. She had packed it the same night Nikolai left her apartment, which she was choosing not to think about too hard. They drove her to a warehouse in the South Side. Inside, a man was bleeding heavily from a gunshot wound to the shoulder. Two of Nikolai's men hovered uselessly while the man cursed at the ceiling. Nikolai stood against the wall, watching her arrive. Vivienne didn't look at him. She went straight to the patient, snapped on gloves, started her assessment. Clean entry, no exit bullet was still in. She had dealt with worse at the hospital on a slow Thursday. "I need better light, clean water, and someone to hold this man still," she said. "And if anyone in this room passes out, I am leaving them on the floor." Someone almost laughed. Nobody passed out. She worked for 2 hours. When it was done and the man was stable and stitched and mildly sedated, she stripped off her gloves and turned to find Nikolai holding a cup of coffee out to her. She took it without a word. "You're good," he said. "I know," she said. They stood in the quiet of the warehouse while his men moved around them, cleaning up, and Vivienne drank her coffee and tried not to notice that standing next to Nikolai Voss felt, inexplicably, like standing next to something solid in a storm. "The man you just helped," Nikolai said quietly. His name is Marco. He has a daughter. She's 7. Vivienne looked at him. Why are you telling me that? Because you looked like you needed a reason. He glanced at her sideways. You didn't, though. You would have helped him anyway. Don't do that, she said. Do what? Act like you understand me. I don't understand you, he said. That's the problem. It became a pattern over the following weeks. The calls came irregularly, sometimes twice in a week, sometimes not for 10 days. She showed up, she worked, she left. She told herself it was clean, contained, a transaction. She told herself she felt nothing when he handed her coffee and stood close enough that she could smell the faint cedar of whatever he wore. She was an excellent liar when she needed to be. The night things shifted, she had just finished treating a knife wound on a young soldier in Nikolai's organization, barely 20, terrified, trying not to cry. Vivienne had talked him through it the whole time, low and steady, the way she talked all her patients through the worst moments. When she came out of the room, Nikolai was waiting in the hallway. You talked to him the entire time, he said. It helps with pain response. You didn't talk to Marco like that. Marco was unconscious. You talked to him anyway, Nikolai said. I could hear you from the hallway. You told him his daughter needed him to be stubborn. Vivienne looked up at him. He was closer than usual. The hallway was narrow, and he had not stepped back, and neither had she, and she was becoming aware of this as a problem. What do you want, Nikolai? She said, his first name, which she hadn't used before, which she noticed him notice. I want to know why you're still here, he said. You could have walked away twice now. I gave you the exit. You didn't take it. Maybe I'm stubborn too. Maybe, he said. His eyes moved over her face, slow, thorough, the way they always did, like she was something he was still trying to solve. Or maybe you stay because somewhere in that relentlessly logical brain of yours, you've decided I'm not entirely what you thought I was. Don't flatter yourself. Tell me I'm wrong. She couldn't. That was the problem. She had watched him over these weeks in the spaces between the crisis and the cleanup. She had watched him remember the names of every person in his organization, down to the newest recruit. She had watched him make brutal decisions with steady hands and then stand alone afterward with something in his expression that looked, terribly, like the weight of it. She had watched him be, in all the ways that shouldn't matter, a man. You're still dangerous, she said. Yes, he agreed. You've done things I can't excuse. Yes, he said again without flinching. Then why do I? She stopped herself. Why do you what? His voice had dropped. The hallway felt smaller. Vivienne looked at him for a long moment, at the dark eyes that had found hers in the rain on Calloway Lane and never really let go, at the man who had threatened her sister and then kept every promise he'd made since, at the impossible, inconvenient, infuriating truth that she had walked into his orbit looking for a reason to despise him and found, instead, something she had no clean word for. This is a terrible idea, she said quietly. Catastrophic, he agreed. He hadn't moved. Neither had she. I fight back, she warned him. I always fight back. I won't become someone who disappears quietly into your world. I know, he said. Something in his expression shifted. Warm was the wrong word for it, too soft, but it was something in that direction. I'm counting on it. She kissed him first. She would always be the one to move first. They both knew it, even then. He responded like he had been waiting without realizing he was waiting, one hand rising to her jaw, steady and certain, and Vivienne thought distantly that she had made many questionable decisions in her life, but this one, at least, she was making with her eyes open. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. This changes things, he said. Everything, she agreed. Outside, Chicago hummed with its usual indifferent noise. Inside, in a narrow hallway that smelled like antiseptic and cedar, Vivienne Cole and Nikolai Voss stood in the wreckage of every careful wall they had built, and neither of them stepped back. Some witnesses, it turned out, were impossible to silence, especially the ones who refused to look away.